and welcome to another discussion video. As I mentioned recently, I thought, having read quite a lot recently, I thought I would make some videos featuring various different books rather than doing whole videos on individual books, because I've so enjoyed all the things I've been reading recently. I've been choosing myself some good books. So today I basically wanted to do a kind of 10 audiobooks that I've enjoyed that I've read recently. So you'll recognise most of these from wrap-ups that I've filmed, whether that's monthly wrap-ups or readathon wrap-ups. So the first one I want to talk about is not the actual book here, but it is the other book in the Lady Janie series, and that is My Lady Jane, which is by Cynthia, Brodi, Ashton and Jodi Meadows. My Lady Jane is a retelling of the story of Lady Jane Grey, and basically gives Lady Jane Grey the ending that we wish that she had had, or the ending that these guys wish that she had had, and is an absolutely fantastic audiobook. The narrator does a great job of the narration. I had a couple of issues with the Scottish accent, but you know, nobody's perfect. It's not as bad as a lot of Scottish accents I've heard on audiobooks. Basically, this is a comedy, young adult, historical fiction retelling, which wouldn't normally be my kind of thing, but I love how it is written and the things that they've changed to make it more interesting and much more funny. One of my favourite things about that book, and that I know I'm going to love in this book when I read it, is the fact that they have little asides. So you have like the narrator speaking to you as well as hearing the characters talking to you. So for example, about just over halfway through the book, the narrators talk directly to the listener, to the reader, and say, okay, so far we've stuck pretty closely to historical accuracy, but stuff from here on in, you know, definitely isn't how it really happened, but it's how we want to imagine that it really happened. And little asides to do with what the characters are doing, like why on earth would he think of doing that, or we can't imagine you know, how heavy that must have been, and things like that, which I think works really well as an audiobook. I'm sure that when I read this one, it will also work really well reading it on the page, but as an audiobook, it just did a really great job. Then I was lucky enough to receive some audiobooks from Penguin Random House, and they're all things that I definitely would have picked up anyway, and definitely things I was intrigued by, but I was able to listen to them on audio because you know, and they know now, that I love an audiobook. So I do have physical copies of a couple of these. One of them is My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which has this wonderful pink cover, which is obviously what drew me to it in the first place. Obviously it's a library book, so we've got a bit of shine going on here, got some weird shadows. So this one follows a woman living in New York, a young woman. So this is adult fiction. We had young adult fiction. Again, I'm tried to give a nice broad spectrum of different kinds of audiobook. This covers a woman living in New York who basically it says, a young woman's efforts to duck the world by embarking on an extended hibernation with the help of one of the worst psychiatrists in the annals of literature and a battery of medicines that she prescribes. So basically, yeah, this woman decides that she needs to escape the world for a little bit. She's not loving life. She considers herself to be an orphan, even though she's an adult, because she's lost both her parents. She considers herself to be an orphan. She does have friends. She does have a love interest. But yeah, this book is intense. It's definitely makes the reader, listener uncomfortable. But it makes you uncomfortable in the same way that like you like to be made uncomfortable by a good thriller or a horror, and so you kind of like want to keep reading and want to find out what happens to her. Some of the things she does in this book are really quite shocking. Some of the advice that her psychiatrist gives her is shockingly terrible. But in some ways she's easy to relate to, because if you decided that there was a way for you to escape the world with pills that you've been, you know, legally prescribed by your medical professional that you sought out, it's a tempting prospect. It is a tempting prospect to be able to, hibernate for a little bit. And so it's really interesting looking at the thought processes and this journey that she goes through and the way she kind of like thinks about things and changes things over time. As I say, it made me uncomfortable, but I think in a good way. And I'm glad that I read it, definitely. Then another one from Penguin Random House that is non-fiction, and that is You're on an Airplane, a self-mythologizing memoir by Parker Posey. So obviously this is an actress's memoir, and it is read by her, and it is written and it is read as if you are on an airplane with her and she is just chatting to you and telling you things. She asks questions, she talks about her dog who is with her on this plane. She doesn't talk about things in chronological order, and this is one of the reasons that I love reading memoirs in the form of audiobooks, because it is just like you are having a chat with that particular person. They're telling you a few anecdotes, they're telling you a few stories from their life, past and present. But she takes it to another level because she's written it such that it's like you're sitting and chatting on an airplane. And she ties a lot of her stories back into air travel, so going different places or the feelings that she has connected with air travel and those other times that she's had those feelings in her life. So she's structured it in a very different way. There's lots about her that I didn't know. She is an actress that's obviously more known for doing indie films, and she talks about that in the book as well. And yeah, it was a good time. I enjoyed listening to her. I was eager to get back to it, and as I say, I learned some things that I didn't know before. And yeah, she just took that, structuring it in the chat form, to the next level. We were on an aeroplane. Yeah, she talks about what drinks we're gonna get as well, which is quite cool. I liked it, yeah. And then one that I pre-ordered on audiobook, again, it's not this actual book, but it is the sequel to it. So the sequel to How to Build a Girl by Moran is called How to Be Famous. In the UK, the cover is similar to this but blue. In the US, the cover is similar to this but pink, if you're looking out for it. And a lot of people get confused and think that Moran only writes non-fiction. Her non-fiction stuff is amazing, and I will just read anything that she writes. But this is a young adult coming of age series now, because there are 2 books in this series, following Johanna, who goes to become a music journalist in London, and gets called Dolly there. Her kind of pen name is Dolly Wilde, and it's sort of, very, very much coming of age, finding her place in a London in the 90s. That's the other amazing thing about it. Very much in the 90s. And yeah, finding, now she's got this freedom, what's she going to do with it? Now she's got all this access to literally sex, drugs and rock and roll. What's she going to do with it? Seeing how she interacts with other people in the business, because she is so young when she starts. And basically this novel was the start of it all. And then How to Be Famous is once she's there and she's working as a journalist, how does it carry on from there? Where she taking her career? Where's she taking her life? How does her family fit into all of this? How do relationships fit into all of this? And yeah, just remembering that this is still surrounding a teenage girl. You hear about these record parties and these music industry parties, and it's like, well, this is a teenager at these parties. And the other great thing about it is that it is narrated by somebody who has a Midlands accent, because Caitlin Moran's from the Midlands and Johanna is from the Midlands, and so we needed to hear that Midlands accent, and so I would really recommend both of these on audiobook. I do have a physical copy of this one, but I did listen to it on audiobook. I think I might have pre-ordered that one as well, because I don't know if I've mentioned, but I will listen or read anything that Caitlin Moran has to say, because I think she's wonderful. Then going back to some adult fiction, I listened to The Intermission by Elissa Freidland. Freidland? I think it's Freidland. I should have listened when it introduced it at the start of the audiobook. This is about a couple who, they've not been married for very long. They decide they're going to have a baby, but then the wife, Cass, decides that she would like an intermission before she takes that massive life step. And so it shows what they're like together and what they're like on their own. Obviously, we as a listener get to hear how their lives are separately, so it's a bit of a dual narrative. It's a dual narrative that doesn't have two different narrators, but I think you still definitely get a sense of the tone, the difference in tone, excuse me, between Cass and John, the two people in this couple. So even though it doesn't have two different narrators, it's still got a definite separation between the two. This one is adult fiction, and I believe this is a debut. I have to admit that it was a cover pick. I got both this and the audiobook from the library because I'd seen it on Instagram. I can't really say much more about that because I don't want to give any spoilers, but the dog here does play a key part in the story as well. But yeah, it's another one that I've enjoyed recently. And then more non-fiction. I talked about this one in my 24 and 48 wrap-up and my July wrap-up, and that is Educated by Tara Westover, which is a sort of memoir. Sorry, the lights are flashing. I don't know which lights are flashing. Maybe we're going to have a storm like in my video that I filmed yesterday. Had some lovely thunder in there. Yes, so this is a memoir about a girl, a woman, obviously Tara Westover, who has never been in education. She's been, educated at home. She's been raised by her parents. They are Mormon, and they seem to live between Idaho and Utah. And it covers what it's like when she decides that she would like to be educated, the different hoops that she has to jump through, the different efforts that she has to make herself, and the way that she goes about dealing with all of those things. Even though it's written by Tara Westover, it is not read by Tara Westover, but I think the narrator does a really good job of dealing with the feelings that this writer has put into her memoir. I think the author can kind of sense what the narrator can sense what the author was trying to get across, and I think it's a really well narrated audiobook, and definitely one I'd recommend. This is one that I got from Penguin Random House as well. Just as I got the library book out the library, I had it on hold for a little while, so that's why I have a physical copy of it. Yeah, lots of these I end up getting the audiobook from the library or the publisher at the same time as I get the actual physical book. And then going back to young adult fiction again, I listened to Dear Martin by Nick Stone, which is about a boy who grows up. He is black and grows up in a black neighborhood where he has seen friends from his neighborhood treated unfairly in society and by the police, and he does not go to a school which is in his neighborhood. He goes to a different school, so it's a bit like in The Hate You Give, where Star goes to a different school than in her neighborhood, but he goes to a different school where being black is definitely in the minority. He has a friend there, but yeah, being black is in the minority, and he kind of starts writing to Martin Luther King, writing him these letters because he wants to live his life like Martin Luther King, to be a better man and to rise above all these social injustices that he sees. It's quite a short audiobook, but I'm still feeling the impact of it now. It's not the most cheerful of audiobooks. I think it's done really, really well because, again, I really feel like the narrator got across the angst and the emotion that the author put into this one. It's obviously deals with this young boy who is facing all these social injustices and everything that's kind of wrong with society, and is trying his best to deal with it himself by trying to embody somebody who he sees as an ultimately good person, and a good person who is a good black role model. And as a teacher, it like really broke my heart to see him struggle and to see what life with his friends was like and what life was like for him in school. And as a reader, it really affected me, and it's still with me now. I was really lucky that I finished listening to the audiobook in the car, and then I went to one of my volunteer sessions at the library, so I was able to work with lots of different children, and that kind of like brought me back up again, which was really nice. But yeah, I really recommend the audiobook of that one. I think, obviously I haven't read the physical book, but I really feel like the emotion really came across because it's written in the first person. I felt like he was talking to me. Justice. Yes. Then another adult fiction that I listened to Laura and Emma by Kate Greathead. I keep calling her Kate Greenhead because everywhere it's kind of semi covered up by the library labels, but I should just like open the book and it's in there, Kate Greathead. This one covers Laura, who is the mother of Emma, and is kind of historical fiction because it's set way back when Laura is younger, before she has Emma, and what her life is like in historical New York, which was wonderful to read about, and then how her life changes when Emma comes into her life, how Emma's life changes over the course. And I don't know if you've heard from other people who've read this book, but this book has a very different ending than what I was expecting. I finished this like a week ago now as I'm making this video, and I'm still not sure how I feel about the ending. I enjoyed the build-up. It's one of those that follows people over time, and so we see them in 1 year, and then we move to another year, and then we move on to another year. Let me find an example. So for example, 1991, and sort of we get to live with them and see how their lives grow and change over the course of those years. I really like the structure of it. The reason I like the audiobook is the fact that obviously we have a child as the star of this one, and I know I've talked a little bit about this before when I've mentioned other books involving children on audiobook, but the narrator doesn't do what I would call just a stupid voice for a child. Sometimes I've listened to audiobooks and the voice of children is done so that you cannot place their age, you can't take them seriously, you just get distracted from the story by the fact that this adult is putting on this child's voice. And I thought that the narrator of this one did a really good job narrating Emma, no matter what age she was. And yeah, I like the writing in this book, I like the structure, and as I say, it was really well narrated. The ending, the jury's still out on the ending, but yeah, I'd recommend trying it out and seeing it for yourself. It's not massively long, but yeah, definitely another recommendation. Then another young adult book, which, if I'm right in thinking, let me just check. Yes, I was right. It has two narrators. So we have Sam and Penny, and we have a male narrator for Sam and a female narrator for Penny. And so we have varying perspectives. You know I love a book with a dual narrative. Sorry, it's quite like weird because it's shiny. Again, got it out of the library at the same time as my hold on the audiobook came through. Sometimes I do switch between them, so that's why I keep both. As soon as I'm done with the audiobook, I do send it back though, because I know that people are waiting for these things. Yeah, so we have Sam and Penny, and Penny is Asian American and Sam, I believe, is white. I hope I'm right in thinking that he's white. But basically, Sam and Penny meet because Sam is having a bit of an emergency and Penny helps him out. And so she becomes his emergency contact. And what we have is just a bit of a love story, a bit of a friendship story. And then we have the issues that both of these guys have with their families. And we also cover the issue of rape and the grey areas of rape when it's rape within a relationship, or rape or alleged rape by somebody you think loves you or you are in love with. It's really affecting the light, sorry. So yes, there's definite trigger warning here, but the overarching storyline is the friendship of these two, and I like the fact that it's narrated by two different people, and I like the fact that it's a dual narrative. We get to see one person's side and then another person's side, and there is one point in the book where we have Penny's side of the story, and then rather than just it being one long Penny chapter, we have the start of another chapter where we think we're going to get Sam, but it's Penny again. And this is, as I say, young adult, essentially romance, but very relationship driven, and very character driven, because these guys both have family issues and they both have friendship issues and they both have relationship issues. So yeah, it's very much about the two of them. And then finally, one more adult fiction that I've loved, and that is The Secrets of Primrose Square by Claudia Carroll. I mentioned in my wrap up that I now find that I have to listen to Claudia Carroll's books on audiobook rather than reading them. So I quite often get an early copy on NetGalley, but that prompts me to pre-order the audiobook because the narrator who does Claudia Carroll's audiobooks has also done some of Melissa Hill's audiobooks and a couple of other Irish authors, and is obviously Irish herself, and she's just a fantastic narrator. And I feel that she makes the fact that these books are set in Dublin or set in other places in Ireland really come alive. Having that Irish narrator there really helps bring the book to life and really makes the story for me. And so now any of Claudia Carroll's books I have to listen to on audiobook. This book features three very different women. We have a mother who is grieving and is unfortunately sort of addicted to some sort of pills. I'm not going to go into what. Then we have her neighbour who is also grieving and is kind of starting over again. Then we have Nancy who's come over from London, and we know she's got some skeletons in her closet in London, so she's starting over again. So it's very much about renewal, but also about the ways in which we can support each other when these times come around, these times for renewal come around. There's also a really fantastic again child in the story. She's a teenager, a young teenager, and again, it's really well narrated. It's not that she has this annoying squeaky baby voice. She has a voice of someone her age in her position, and we kind of get a little bit of an insight into her life as a young carer as well, which I think not enough authors shine a light on that, and not enough authors are confident enough to cover it. So yeah, this is adult fiction. Claudia Carroll is an absolutely fantastic Irish author. If you ever get a chance to pick up any of her stuff, definitely do it. She writes about real families, real situations, real lives, but her characters always have a little bit more to them than meets the eye. But yeah, it's very much about characters supporting each other, families sticking together, whether that's the family that we're born into or the family that we create for ourselves. So yeah, so I hope you've got some good recommendations there. If you have other audiobook recommendations, definitely leave them in the comments below. Or if you disagree with me about any of these particular audiobooks, then again, leave me a comment. I'd love to have a chat down there. If you enjoyed this video, want to see more, definitely give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed so that my next video lands right in your subscription feed. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.